G'day, guys, and welcome to the Centre Bounds, where today we'll be talking about the most exciting slash interesting games coming up. The fixtures come out, and we
hmm
now know, Big J, what's to come.
Yeah. There seems to definitely be a bit of a theme this year in the AFL. Like they're trying to, construct some rivalries, if not like punish some players and punish some coaches for moving across. Be like, hey, this team, you used to coach them. Now you're going to play them twice.
They couldn't wait because exactly as you described is happening in round zero.
hmm
Uh, Ridiculous naming, the opening round, round zero, with
Yep.
Gold Coast v Richmond in the Dimmer Hardwick Cup.
Mate, it's a tricky one, right? I mean, it's almost what was almost the Dusty Martin Cup up to a little while ago. But yeah, it is what it is. I think one of them as well. I think the first one, because it's round zero, is actually getting played up north. And then the
Correct.
next one might be in the MCG. So, Gold Coast gets some good exposure here. They've got a fantastic coach, 3 premiership wins. Now they get to play the best team. Well, the team that was the best a few years ago, the last couple of years. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting for them.
Against I guess you would have to say they're going to be a rejuvenated Richmond playing under Adam Uze now, new coach who finally gets his gig. He's tried many times to
Mm.
be a senior coach in other places, always fallen short. You'd imagine that he's taken this job with both hands on the reins and he's super excited, can't wait to go. So, and they've given us in the first round and the last round, just in case, you know what I mean? Like there's an opening ceremony and the closing ceremony of the season.
Do you think the same team will win both? Or do you think maybe Gold Coast gets the first one and then Richmond, as they start the push for finals, they're going to take the second one?
Yeah, it's good. I think that's a good question. I think Gold Coast are more likely to start off really hot. I
Mm-hmm.
think Gold Coast are more likely to start like a house on fire. They're the younger team, a lot more
Yep.
young with a lot more youth, I think, on their team. Plus, they've got Dimmer Hardwick, who will sort of tell them exactly how they're supposed to play. Whereas with Adam Uze, he's coming in building a strategy, I'd imagine. So I think Richmond are
Mm-hmm.
going to be slower. And I think come the end of the season, Richmond will get the second one over Gold Coast, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I actually half think that Gold Coast is the better team. So maybe they end up taking both. We'll kind of see,
Good.
wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. Another interesting game in that opening round is Sydney v Melbourne. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously this would end up being the Brodie Grundy Cup, this one.
Yes. Yeah. As I said in the intro, right? The AFL's trying to construct some things. They think they're sneaky, but Big J's onto them.
Yeah, and then you follow on to that, GWS and Collingwood also in that first round. The Bobby Hill Cup.
There you go. There you go. And it's weird because all of them are played in the Northern Territory. This round zero, we'll talk about it in another episode, but mate, it is a pain and Supercoach, but just in AFL in general. I mean, there's 4 games in round zero, and then teams are paying for it with buys for the next 2 or 3 weeks. AFL's on something trippy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we finally, though, get to normal territories where we're finally talking about genuinely round one. And it's an Essendon v Hawthorn sort of matchup that I think is really intriguing because both of these teams, I think there's a bit of uncertainty around what sort of expectations we should have for these two teams, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the second half of the season, yes, Hawthorn finished third last, but they still did really, really well. They're improving. They've brought a couple of players in and changed some things around as well. That forward line with Nick Watson in there just looks a bit scary, Joe. You've got to play them round one. Good luck to you. But then on the second end as well, like Essendon's not going to be a pushover next year. Maybe we'll see. Maybe Brad Scott's lost his marbles by bringing in all these ex-North Melbourne players. But we'll see what happens there. It's going to be a ripper game. And, for both teams, I think, really good start to the season.
Yeah, exactly. I think we'll find out a lot more about these two teams after that game. We move to round 3, where we have the first matchup between the two grand finalists of last year, Brisbane and Collingwood. They're playing it at the Gabba to start, and then round 23, they make their way down to Victoria to play Collingwood at their home deck. I'm looking forward to seeing how Brisbane fight back after last year's result.
Yeah, I'm really surprised they didn't do a Collingwood and Brisbane like round 24 game, just to have it cool. The grand finalists last year, obviously one team won and one team lost, and then to do that again for round 24. But yeah, 2 cracking games. I think as well, kind of as we go through these games, the second half of the season, we're going to see a lot of these top teams playing each other, just because I think last year as well, some really, really exciting games to finish the season. You know, these really good teams as well maybe aren't playing the North Melbourne and West Coast twice like they did last year.
Yeah, exactly. This one isn't a battle of the Titans. This one is the WA, the Derby in round 6 between West Coast and Fremantle. This one's an interesting one because Freo haven't added any talent to their list this year, whereas West Coast have just added their Messiah and Harley Reid. Is that going to be enough, you reckon, to sort of bridge the gap between these two clubs?
Oh, I mean, it's like Port Adelaide and Adelaide, right? Every time they play, it's bragging rights for the next 5 or 6 weeks. So it's going to be the same thing here. I think it's really interesting too because West Coast have lost some players, but they've actually brought in some real talent across the board. And it's going to be, Battle of the Brockmans, really. He went to West Coast. Should he have gone to Fremantle instead? You've got a team in West Coast who you'd say are probably rebuilding and a Fremantle who are building up after kind of having a poor season this year. So, as you say, good game to go down to Perth if you can buy tickets. There's West Coast home games, mate. Like, they sell out pretty quick. Harley Reid's going to sell out the whole season before they play a game.
Mate, he's worth his weight in gold. Just
he's done. He could retire now, and the amount of jerseys that they've sold, give him a pay rise, mate. Done.
Build him a statue.
Well, I think that's already happened. First goal is getting a statue.
We're going to move on. In the same round, an interesting game between St Kilda and the Western Bulldogs. Again, these are two teams that people, I think, are going to struggle to put expectations on. St Kilda, yes, they made finals, but they got killed by the Giants. So they sort of were just making the numbers there, and the Bulldogs missed. So again, a big question mark over both of these two teams. So they're playing at Marvel Stadium. They both love to play there. This is going to be really intriguing to see whether or not any of these two sides will actually take the next step.
Yeah, it's the Nick Caulfield Cup. It's an interesting one, as you say. You've got two teams that are kind of around the mark, but maybe aren't going there. Whoever wins this game is probably a good indication of who's actually doing well into finals. So it is only round 6, but the trajectory from that, as we know, can push them really far.
Yeah, agreed. We move to, this one is a genuine rivalry here, built over a number of years. The Battle of the Bridge, Sydney v. the Giants, starts in round 8. They meet again in round 15. Both of these two teams are looking red hot coming into 2024.
Yeah, we talk about blockbuster games. Whenever Sydney plays Sydney, it just sets the house on fire. They're playing twice this year. It's going to be a massive one. The real question is, post-Buddy, what happens to Sydney? Do they falter a little bit? Do they, do a lot better? And GWS, can they really keep up the form that they've had this year? Both are really good question marks, and playing kind of rounds 18 and 15, because after 15 is almost round 24, right? So you could say, cool, first part of the season, how the team's tracking, second half of the season, how the team's tracking, and then into finals, how a team's tracking. So it's going to be really good progress to kind of watch this game and figure that out.
Yeah, because you can see, Sydney sort of, Sydney definitely were involved in the trade period, getting some players to come across. I think none bigger than, obviously, Grundy coming across. So he's probably the best ruckman that they've had in a long time. And their midfield is quality. So having a guy like Grundy tapping down to them, GWS, we've seen just how important a guy like Kieran Briggs, his emergence was for that side. So simply having a great ruckman can go a long way if you have a good midfield. So this is going to be a really intriguing battle in the midfield. And didn't the Swans also pick up Taylor Adams as well? So again, that's another big acquisition, James Jordan. So that it wasn't like they just got old. They also got some youth as well. So and the Giants are a very well-balanced team. So great game. I can't wait for these two. Oh, speaking of these two, ay caramba. Ay caramba, man.
Yeah.
Carlton v Collingwood, yikes.
It's the right time for both teams to play each other twice, right? If it was 5 years ago and Carlton were getting slaughtered every week versus the premiers, you've got to play them twice. It's like, oh, cool. Let's go down and watch the game as a Carlton fan. But you could almost say, hey, it's actually going to be really tough to pick who wins these games, at least to start with the season. You know, form during the season makes a lot better, kind of that week's tipping. But both teams are in red-hot form. One almost made finals. The other one won the grand final. So very, very exciting game.
Oh, MCG is going to be absolutely chock-a-block for both of these games,
yep.
Especially if their injury lists are going are all right. As long as like they're not decimated by injury, then yeah, this is going to be a really close game. These two teams hate each other. Their supporter bases hate each other even more. So yeah, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be genuinely great, and we're going to be sitting on the side eating our popcorn. Speaking of other two teams that hate each other, Adelaide and Port Adelaide. It's round 8 and round 23. You know what I mean? Like, it's that round 8 is going to be a great round. Carlton, Collingwood, Adelaide v Port. You know, showdowns galore.
I told you. I'll say it again. I've said it 4 times already. The AFL is orchestrating this season to be a fantastic one. There is a few dodgy games, but when the derbies are playing twice, mate, they're making their money's worth that week. You watch all the gambling ads, they're all going to play. That's it.
But wait, there's more. The Q Clash is also on in round 8. Brisbane v Gold Coast. Round 8 is going to be a blockbuster, and this is probably going to be the most entertaining Q Clash because Gold Coast, I don't think will have ever been as competitive as they're going to be this year with Dimmer at the helm, all these great young talent coming in via the draft. This is going to be a really entertaining clash.
Yeah, you'd hope that it was going to be 2 top 10. Well, top 10s. I'm going to say top 10, top 8 teams playing in this game. We should do a video on it, but it's probably going to be titled Gold Coast or Bust. Let's make finals. And winning these type of games is actually going to really boost them up for them. As you say, it's probably going to be the most competitive game that both teams playing each other's actually happened because Brisbane, up until this point, has slaughtered Gold Coast, I think, every single time. Or at least one pretty comfortably. So under Dimmer, can Gold Coast say, hey, mate, look, Jed Walter kick a few, Ben King kick a few Brisbane players, you'll be right.
Yes, especially Zorko, fucking flog. All right, then we move to another Carlton game. This is in round 9. What is shaping up to be a modern-day rivalry. These two teams have had some absolute crackers in recent memory. They're both breaking each other's hearts. Cozzy Pickett broke Carlton fans' hearts when they kicked that spectacular goal in the last minute. Petrarca gets his goal denied by a touch before the line, and Carlton ended up winning last year. So these two absolutely are going right at it every single time.
Yeah, and similar to a few other games we've talked about as well, barring injuries, both should have some really good players in form. It's really going to come down to like Oliver versus Cripps, which when that happens, it's always a good game to watch.
Correct. Absolutely. This one was a really entertaining matchup last year. Two very close results in Collingwood's favour. Can Adelaide get the jump up this year?
Yeah. I mean, I'll go back to us making a video. One's coming out for Adelaide this year. And Adelaide is my tip for the team to break into the top 8. I'm not sure who's leaving, but winning games against Collingwood is going to really show how good they're going. And they're going to push hard for finals if they do, I reckon.
Yeah, they are skirting with the top 4 in my predictions. Now, we haven't forgotten your boys, North Melbourne, coming up against West Coast.
One feature game, battle for the wooden spoon here. I think West Coast is going to be around there. I really hope North Melbourne is going to do like a Gold Coast and kind of push up a little bit higher in the rankings this year. We have the capacity to do it, but this is in Perth. So I think if it was a Melbourne, it'd probably be a lot more even. But that home ground for West Coast, when you've got 100,000 people saying, you didn't get Harley Reid, and North like, well, we got, 2 fantastic players, so stuff you. It's going to be a good week.
Oh, especially if they show out and Harley Reid gets stuck in the forward line.
Yeah, so Zerha's going to tackle him just to be like, you should have come to North, mate. Watch out.
Zerha, the enforcer. Yeah, it's a good. I think it's going to be a good middle of the season. These were the 2 bottom teams from last year. And we see how they're going, how much have they improved between last year and this year.
Yes, definitely.
These 2 teams, I don't expect to see much improvement out of them, but I would love to see the response that Collingwood are going to have to Stephen May's comments.
Yes. Yes. He I think he had a few too many drinks, and then what was it, their grand final party or their end of year party? He it said some things that maybe kind of got under people's skin. Jack Ginnivan's no longer at Collingwood, so he can't like give him a bit of a rough around. But yeah, Collingwood, it's a real gauge, similar to a couple of other ones this year. Real gauge of, hey, this is how the teams are going. Both brutal games. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and that second game in the last week of the season, really interesting. Will, I think, have a massive top 4 ramifications possibly as well. So
yeah,
that's
have we ever had a season where a team's played round 24 and then had a week off and then played each other again in first round of the finals? Because that could really happen this year with these two teams.
It could. We move to another game that another two teams that do also meet up in round 24, which could have big finals ramifications in Adelaide and Sydney. Both two teams who are really building to attack 2024.
Yeah, I think we've called Adelaide about 3 or 4 times already, and it just really shows how those South Australian teams, they go under the radar a bit. In Melbourne, we're like, yeah, cool, Adelaide, whatever. But they're looking really scary. And versus Sydney, 2 young teams, one just made finals, one didn't. Hopefully the umpiring decisions in this game are a little bit better than what happened. But another round 24, I'll be like, hey, mate, watch out.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's going to be insane. And those, it's exactly, these South Australians and these interstate teams fly under the radar. But those who know ball, all of them will tell you that Adelaide are going to be the real deal this year. So you better watch out. Sydney, Sydney, the Bloods culture, but they've gone and added genuine talent from outside that is mature. Grundy, Adams, even James Jordan has got quite a bit of experience under his belt already for a young player. So they're looking dangerous as well. So this is going to be cracking matchup. Speaking of cracking, Port Power against Western Bulldogs in round 17 could be the battle of who's getting sacked first.
Yeah, definitely. Or both coaches are already sacked because they're both, in the second part of the ladder. Outside of getting sacked, I think really this is one of the games where the Dogs have to win. They've kind of struggled in these ones where Port's, been top 4 and then the Dogs have just been outside the 8. So it's going to be a real game. And can the Dogs tear them apart? That's kind of, what we're waiting for.
Isn't that what dogs are supposed to do? They see a chew toy,
have to, right?
Tearing things apart.
Yep.
All right. We then move to Freo v Melbourne, round 19. This is always an interesting matchup between Fremantle and Melbourne. Fremantle seem to do better against Melbourne here in Victoria, whereas Melbourne get the job done when they go over there. But it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Fremantle intrigues me. They've lost so much talent over the years. Of course, some might say it's just go home factor or things outside of their control. But this Lockie Schultz one, for example, I imagine it's going to hurt a lot. Yeah,
I really think so. People were predicting them to have a down year this year and then go back up the ladder. With Schultz out, I really don't know if that's going to happen. They really got to try and replace him. I think Jai Amos is going to have trouble, but in the Luke Jackson Cup, it's going to be a really interesting game.
Exactly. And then we get to, again, Adelaide, on everyone's lips, especially in the football world. And then when you see the news article the other day, how I think almost everyone had a PB in the time trial. You know what I mean? So it's when all these things are building in the right direction, and you're all and everyone who knows football is anticipating a rise from Adelaide this year. A game against Essendon at Marvel Stadium in round 19 is a game that they should be winning if they are to genuinely be taking that next step forward. They dropped that game this year in 2023 that I was at. Very happy about that result. But if they were the real deal, as we all anticipate them to be, they should be winning this game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not a game at the MCG, but winning against Melbourne crowds is something that Adelaide need to do if they're going to be pushing forwards finals next year. Essendon, I'll probably consider you guys to be another team with Adelaide that's around the mark. definitely pushing for finals like Adelaide is. So whoever wins this game might be the tell which one makes finals and which one doesn't.
Yeah. And it's like towards the end of the season, round 19, you know, five rounds to go. So it could be a really interesting show and see what ends up happening there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, were some of the games that we think are going to be the most exciting / interesting for 2024. Let us know in the comments down below if there are any games that you think that we've missed.
Yeah. And guys, give your predictions if you want to on who you think are going to win each games. Was our tell and was our kind of pick up on who we think are going to be impactful, was that the right one?
And please make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because many more videos like this are going to be coming out in the coming days. Right, guys?
Yeah. It's going to be a killer preseason. Remember, here at the Centre Bounce, we do the hard work so you don't have to. Bye for now.
Bye for now.